hard to make. This video is actually turning out to be really hard to make because I'm trying to compare 3 movies to 12 really cool, really epic books that are nothing like the movies, so I don't even have a point of reference, and I'm trying to... Okay, this is my 4th attempt at this video because... I keep trying to explain all the books in very short order, which is really hard. Okay, so, in 2010, DreamWorks Animation released what I am sure will go down to be their best movie ever, which is How to Train Your Dragon. Now, despite the fact when I first saw promotional material for this movie, I thought it looked incredibly dumb, it is, in my opinion, a perfect movie. I have absolutely no problems with that first movie. The music is fantastic, the animation is amazing, and while it doesn't quite hold up to the technology, well, you can see the marked difference between each movie, where the animation got a lot better. But the animation is still fantastic. The romantic flight is still, oh my gosh, I remember watching that in awe. The acting is great, the story is great, but at the same time, it's a very simple story. And if you haven't seen the first How to Train Your Dragon, what are you doing with your life? Seriously, go watch it. Watch all 3 of them. However, the second and third movies... Okay, the first movie was co-directed by Chris Sanders and Dean DeBlois. They also did Lilo and Stitch, which is another darn near perfect movie, in my opinion. Apparently they had a falling out in between How to Train Your Dragon 1 and 2, and Chris Sanders instead went off and did The Croods instead of coming back. He does have an executive producer credit, but I don't think he actually had a huge hand in it, because I don't see his hand in it. If you look at stories like Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon and The Croods, which was what he did instead of How to Train Your Dragon 2, they're extremely heartfelt movies, and they're very tightly made. How to Train Your Dragon 2 doesn't really have that. Now, it certainly tries. And the second and third movies do definitely have an emotional arc. And the emotional arc through the 3, with the friendship of Hiccup and Toothless, is fantastic. I've cried every time I've seen the ending of 3. I've only seen it twice, because I can't quite bring myself to cry through it a 3rd time. And I'm waiting until my mom and I can calm down, until our schedules calm down enough that we can watch it together. But the second movie, they made it clear that they wanted to build the story to be more epic. They wanted, I don't remember if it was Dean DeBlois or Jay Baruchel, who voices Hiccup, who said, "We want this movie to be able to sit on the shelf next to Star Wars and The Lord of the Rings." The second movie, for me, almost gets there. They clearly have an interesting setup, in that you have Drago Bloodfist, who is building a dragon army, and he wants to take over the world, essentially. The problem is that then we get to 3, and Drago could have come back. He was never confirmed dead at the end of the second movie, and I thought they were going to bring Drago back to complete the story, so to speak. Because anyway, for the third movie, instead we got Grimmel, who feels much more like he belongs in the Netflix series Race to the Edge, which is awful. Maybe at some point I will talk about it, but Race to the Edge is awful. He feels much more like a Race to the Edge villain than he does a movie villain. And even when I sat through the movie in the theaters, I'm like, this feels more like an overextended two-part season finale for the show than it does a movie. I mean, the animation is better and the music is higher quality, but it didn't live up to the hype for me. I really felt let down. In part because hopefully I actually remember to put in the musical cue there. That's not gonna make sense. So, the third movie just fell flat for me. It didn't feel epic. We got the three warlords, which were clearly meant to... We got the three warlords who were supposed to be Drago's lieutenants? Followers? This is never really established. And we get Grimmel, who feels far too cartoonish. And his dragons, which are pretty much taken straight from the books. They look and act more like book dragons than any of the others in the movie. Or in any of the movies, really. But it just felt so comical. It was too much. It was trying too hard. And like I said, the emotional arc was fantastic. It was just the main plot of the story. And for me, the hidden world doesn't make sense because... So, we have Dragon Island from the first movie, which is where Hiccup fought the Red Death, also known as the Nest, as Stoic called it. In the holiday special, Gift of the Night Fury, we have the volcanic island where the dragons go to mate and hatch their eggs. Then in the second movie, we have the Bewilderbeast's nest, and now we have a whole hidden world. It just feels like too much, and I didn't get a good understanding of how all these different things are supposed to weave together. But I think a serious disadvantage I had, and that the movie had, was this. Now this, unfortunately, is the only How to Train Your Dragon book I own. This is book 12, How to Fight a Dragon's Fury. The 12 books, for those of you who are wondering, are How to Train Your Dragon, How to Be a Pirate, How to Speak Dragonese, How to Cheat a Dragon's Curse, How to Twist a Dragon's Tail, A Hero's Guide to Deadly Dragons, How to Ride a Dragon's Storm, How to Break a Dragon's Heart, How to Steal a Dragon's Sword, How to Seize a Dragon's Jewel, How to Betray a Dragon's Hero, How to Fight a Dragon's Fury. Ta-da! The only reason I own this one is because I needed it as soon as it came out, and I could not wait for the library to process it. Because my library took forever to process anything. So, I started reading the books after I saw the first movie, which wasn't until it came out on DVD, because I was in a very bad place when the first movie came out. But I picked up the books out of curiosity, and they're very different. When they say it's a loose adaptation, it's a very loose adaptation. But it never bothered me. I'm one of those people who's very particular about adaptations. I'm the person who will sit through a movie and go, okay, but in the book, I'm obnoxious to watch movies with. I don't blame my friends who have said they will not watch movies with me, because I'm one of those people. I'm still griping that I say Conan the Barbarian, and people automatically think of crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentations of their women. It's not in the books. Yeah. Okay. So, the funny thing is that these books are aimed at 8 to 12-year-old boys. There is a lot of bathroom humor. There is a lot of crass comedy and slapstick. But I never minded the difference between the books and the movie, because I really felt the first movie very much stayed true to the core of the books, which is in the prologue to the first book. All the books have a framing device of an older Hiccup looking back on his life and how he became king of the Wilder West, which is also called the Barbaric Archipelago. And he's in the prologue to the first book, he says, "This is how to become a hero the hard way." Because no one expected him to be a hero. In fact, his father should have killed him as soon as he was born in the books, because the name Hiccup Horrendous Haddock is cursed in the Hooligan tribe, and all the Viking tribes have some variation of the saying, "Only the strong can belong," or "Throw out the freak or the tribe will be weak." And I don't want to take too long, and I don't want to go on a huge rambling summary of the books, because we would be here way too long. But the thing about it is that the books create this, even while the writing is simple and everything about it is kind of simple, it builds a really complex world. You have multiple Viking tribes who all have their interrelationships. The hooligan, okay, in the books they're called the Hairy Hooligans. I hate it, but they're called the Hairy Hooligans, and they're allies with the Bog Burglars. And what's really interesting, it's never really brought up in the books, but each tribe has their national anthem, basically. And Burkean history is that the village was founded because some guy was walking through Burke, his boot got stuck in the bog and got lost, and he said, "My descendants will stay here until my boot is found again." Interestingly, the Bog Burglars' national anthem, which we read on the very next page, so it's on facing pages, is, "We're the ones who burgled the bog." And I'm like, hang on. So a boot got lost in a bog and was never found again. And over here you have the thieves who are claiming they burgled the bog. That boot is not there anymore. I guarantee it. But overall, the story is actually a lot more serious. Because, I mean, we have infanticide, and Hiccup's cousin Snotlout has been trying to kill him ever since he was a baby. Like, when it first happened, when you first see it in the book, in How to Be a Pirate, it seems like an accident, but once you get to book 11 and book 12, or actually it's like 10 and 11, or was it? Which one did he die in? Anyway, you discover that, no, Snotlout has been trying to kill Hiccup. Legitimately. Because before Hiccup was born, Snotlout was next in line to be chief. I'll ignore that it actually would have been Snotlout's father. But anyway. But then Hiccup's born, and not only does 2-year-old Snotlout, is like, suddenly everyone's treating me differently. It's his fault. Let's get rid of him. So he's legitimately been trying to kill him for like 14 years. And on top of that, we have the crazy witch Excelador, who you cannot put in a PG movie because just looking at her is terrifying. You also have Betrayal. Oh my god. And monsters and just all these things. But and the first 6 or 7 books, even up until like book 10, all these adventures seem really unrelated. And each book is a different adventure, and Hiccup is going off to find America and ending up captured by Romans, because apparently the Romans and the Vikings existed at the same time in this world. Just go with it. Sorry. I've recorded this several times. My voice is very tired. So, but then we get, suddenly there's a prophecy. And it turns into this intergenerational story about 3 Hiccups who all had the same kind of dragon, and whose destiny was basically started because of the dragon that Hiccup kills in the first book, which is a sea dragoness Giganticus Maximus, which should emphasize for you just how silly these books can be. But all 3 Hiccups have had the ability to speak Dragonese. Speaking Dragonese is illegal and strictly forbidden in Hiccup's time because of Hiccup Horrendous Haddock II, who went to his father, who was Grimbeard the Ghastly, who's kind of a major player in the books. He's been dead for generations, obviously, but he's very much a part of the story because, one, he's Hiccup's ancestor, which is brought up a lot. And early on, Hiccup gets Grimbeard the Ghastly's second favorite sword, which the prophecy we find out later is called the Prophecy of the Wilder West. The dragon time is coming, and only a king can save you now. The king shall be the champion of champions. You shall know the king by the king's lost things. A fang-free dragon, toothless, my second best sword, my Roman shield, an arrow from the land that does not exist, the heart stone, the key that opens all locks, the ticking thing, the throne, the crown, and last and best of all the 10, the dragon jewel will save all men. So we have this intergenerational story of Grimbeard the Ghastly, who accidentally got his son Hiccup Horrendous Haddock II killed, and Hiccup II's dragon, whose original name I don't remember, could never move past that betrayal of his friend, who was like a brother to him. So he ends up imprisoned, but when he's rediscovered, he cannot move past that betrayal, and he declares the Red Rage, which is basically all dragons are going to kill all humans, and they cannot resist it. And it leads to this 3-book war that is... it's incredible, because you get to see all these adventures that Hiccup has had over the first 8 or 9 books are suddenly weaving back together. And everything matters now. He already has like 7 or 8 of the king's lost things by the time we get to the prophecy. And it's absolutely fantastic. And the writer, just the story itself, managed to make me feel things for characters I never thought I would feel anything for. When Snotlout died, when he gave his life to save Hiccup after an extremely emotional redemption arc for him, really, I cried. And here's the thing, I had already seen the second movie at that point, and I hate Snotlout. I absolutely despise Snotlout in the movies, and I cannot stand what they did with him in the third one. Why is he hitting on his aunt? And why is she responding? Ah! It's bad. Okay. They made me cry over Snotlout. of all characters, which I just could not believe. And that's why the third movie fell flat for me, because you bring in these characters who we have no connection to. In the books, we'd had time to meet all the tribes. You knew Mad Guts the murderess was probably a cannibal. Hiccup had been kidnapped by one or two of them. I think Mad Guts doesn't even talk. It's his weaselly little assistant who says, well, Mad Guts has declared. Like, picture Alfred from the Hobbit movies. That's... I think he's even described as, like, Mad Guts' pimple of an assistant or something. He's bad. Yeah. But we have Mad Guts the murderess. We have the chief of the Berserker tribe. We know all these tribes. We know what they do. And the second movie definitely set up the opportunity to really expand the world. Not so much in terms of tribes. They never met. There's a brief mention of other Viking tribes in a flashback in the second movie, with Stoic telling about how a number of the chieftains had gathered to discuss the dragon problem, and that's when Drago Bloodfist first showed up, and he killed everyone, except Stoic, basically, just to prove a point. But we never, outside of the TV show, which I don't count, and again, maybe someday I will talk about why Race to the Edge absolutely sucks! But other than that, we have no other mention of Viking tribes. But what we do have, if you really look at Drago's fleet, you'll see that there's like 3 or 4 different nationalities in them. You can't so much see it in skin tone, but if you look at their clothing, and one of the big examples we have of that is Eret, son of Eret, who is my absolute favorite character in the How to Train Your Dragon movies. Probably my favorite character in everything, because you may notice my screen name, my professional name for everything, is Song W. Eretson. It was supposed to be Song Winters, but I've got a thing for Eret. Do you know how hard it is to have a thing for a character who has almost no screen time, and who in the third movie was completely wasted? Okay, so third movie. We have Hiccup investigating this mariner's legend by his own admission. You have a mariner from a completely different tribe who has spent his entire life and possibly generations of his family trapping dragons? Why are they not conferring? Why is Hiccup not going to Eret, a pirate dragon trapping mariner, and saying, so hey, does your tribe have any mentions of, a lost world, or a dragon home, or anything like this? No, instead they reduce Eret to walking across the screen carrying heavy objects with occasional good lines. What? No! Eret had the best character arc in the second movie. He's basically the Lando Calrissian of How to Train Your Dragon, because much like Han in A New Hope, Lando has to go through this character arc of realizing, oh, maybe it's not all just about him. Now, admittedly, Lando... Anyway, so you have this character who had such a great story arc, who completely turned his whole life. He went from tracking and killing dragons to riding them and joining Burke and siding with them because a dragon saved his life. And there's nothing. So, apparently, according to one of the deleted scenes, he's supposed to spend like half the movie off scouting with Valka, which ties into the stupid little subplot of Snotlout has a crush on his aunt. Okay, so Snotlout and Hiccup in the books are cousins. This is never confirmed in the movie or the TV show, but it's never denied either, so I'm gonna go with it. And Snotlout's father, who in the books is named Baggy Bum the Beer Belly, but in the movies is called Spite Lout. Okay then. He's Stoic second in command. So if they are brothers, that would make sense. That, you know. Why was Eret wasted? Why was Eret wasted? My baby! My man! Okay. Moving on! If I can. So, the third movie, we suddenly have this introduction of warlords who are never named, who are never established. It's never said where they're from. We don't even get to see Eret's tribe. We don't even know what happened to Eret's crew at the end of the second movie. So, and in the books, instead of this, oh, we are trying to build a Viking and dragon utopia. No, it's much higher stakes. It's, I'm trying to end slavery of dragons and humans. I'm trying to stop a giant, murderous Sea Dragonus Giganticus Maximus who has convinced every single dragon in the world, okay, 98% of every dragon in the world, to turn on all humans and kill them. And the Red Rage is not fun. It's not just this... Oh my gosh, are the words of the Red Rage in here? Okay, so... Okay. I could have just read that. I forgot about that. Okay, I really want to see if I can find the words of the Red Rage, because it is only mildly terrifying. Unfortunately, it was mostly in... It was mostly in the books like 10 and 11, where it was really a big deal when it was first introduced. And thankfully, everything written in Dragonese is in a special font, so I can see. Okay, never mind. But it's like, the dragon time has come, make wet your claws with human's blood. It's no small deal. And so, by comparison of this, the world wants peace in movies that have never shown the world ever wanting peace. The world wants peace, and I want to build a hippie dragon-human commune! Compared to, everyone is going to die if I don't stop this problem that I created! And we also have the huge stakes that we know from book 1 that Hiccup is eventually going to become King of the Wilder West and the Barbaric Archipelago. Problem is, in book 6 or 7, he gets the slave mark, which is an S-shaped dragon on his temple. And once you have that in their society, you can never be freed. Slavery can never be undone in their world. You can't be a chief or even a king if you have the slave mark. But as an example of just how incredible these books can be, despite the silliness, so each book has a framing device of an older Hiccup looking back on his life and writing his memories. And about the slave mark, he says, I've come to be grateful for it, because I think every ruler should have a slave mark to remind them that they are slaves to their people, and that their people are the ones they serve. For silly books, they're very mature. And I didn't get that in the third movie. And, you know, if it were just the movies, if I didn't have the books, I think I would have been... I mean, I still think I would have been a little disappointed that they brought in these warlords and then never do anything with them. We don't even find out what happens to them in the end. But for the record, the ending of How to Train Your Dragon 3 is perfect. And actually, Hiccup's monologue at the closing narration, there were dragons when I was a boy. Small cliff dragon. I don't remember it. It's the first paragraph or so is actually taken straight from the first book, and that was what really reduced me to tears. When I watched it, I'm like, oh, you're gonna do that to me and dredge up all these book emotions again. If it had been just the movies, I would have been a bit disappointed by the writing. But I think it wouldn't have been as bad as if I didn't have the books. Because the books actually took the time to earn a reaction from me. And I think that's what it really comes down to, is the books built up a world, they built up a society, they built up multiple tribes, they built up the conflict. They built up the stakes. They built up the characters. And then there were turns that made you care about characters you never thought you would care about. And then there were surprises that were genuinely shocking. And the third movie couldn't really shock me with anything, because, well, one, Dean DeBlois made no secret that, oh yeah, all the dragons are going to leave. Which I already knew from the books. However, the dragons don't leave until Hiccup is much older, because in the end, he manages to create a treaty with the dragons where he says, we're going to do better. But if we can't, you can leave. You can go and hide. And the dragon, Furious, says, I don't think this can work, but we can try. And I'm willing to give peace a chance, basically. But at the same time, as Hiccup gets older and his reign starts to come to an end, the dragons do start to leave, and they start to retreat back into the sea where they came from, which is an important part of the books. But they vanish into the ocean. And because they know once Hiccup's gone, the peace won't be maintained. The same mistakes that were made generations before, the same thing that's been happening in cycles forever and ever and ever, and 3 times at this point, the same cycle will repeat itself. Because the dragons and humans can't really coexist. And while they try to get the same point in the movie, they didn't earn it. And Hiccup's attempts at a dragon utopia are so ridiculous. It's just, oh, we're going to bring all these dragons here, which doesn't make sense. And I expected more from Hiccup. I expected him to be more intelligent. And that's why, if you're going to be epic, if you want me to really respond to a story, if you want any reader or viewer or any audience to respond to your story, you need to earn that reaction. Shock value does not do it. We've seen this with Star Wars. We've seen this with... I just had it. We've seen this with Game of Thrones and all these things. Just because you subvert the audience expectation doesn't mean you've earned anything from them. A true response that will stick with them and that will leave them satisfied is a payoff to something you built up. I know this was very rambling, believe it or not. As usual, it's better than my previous attempts. So, I really highly recommend the books. I know for people who are a bit older it might be hard, because the first few are very seemingly silly. However, everything even to the first book ties back into the 12th, when everything comes together. And, you know, when I was when I was reading the books, especially about like 10 and 11, I'm like, I don't think she planned this. I don't think she planned this. I really thought that like there was a bit of a delay between books 11 and 12, and I'm like, I don't think she wants to finish it. I don't think she planned it at all, and she didn't realize where the story was going to go. No, she had everything planned from day one. It really is a fantastic series, and I highly recommend it. And all things considered, I really do still recommend the movies, because the first one, like I said, it's one of the best movies I've ever seen. It is one of my favorites. Top 5, definitely. The second one, The third one has the emotion. It has the emotional arc payoff. It just doesn't have an overall plot payoff, which Dean DeBlois really wanted, but I don't think he planned it out well enough. And I think that is one of the big deals, is Cressida Cowell planned everything, and there was so much that was foreshadowed and set up throughout all the books. Everything from Fishleg's true parentage to the King's lost things to all of this. And the idea that you have these 3 dragons who, I mean, you have the Woden's Fang, who belonged to Hiccup Horrendous Haddock the First, and the Woden's Fang belonged to the first Hiccup, and the Woden's Fang has just gotten to the point where he's seen the foolishness of men, he's seen the foolishness of dragons, he wants to have hope, but at the same time, he's a pragmatist. And then you have Furious, who cannot get past the rage of losing his human brother. And he's a fully grown sea dragon, so he's like the size of a mountain. He might be slightly smaller, since he's come back out of the water. And then you have Toothless, who is a baby sea dragon, who doesn't even know that he's a Sea Dragoness Giganticus Maximus yet. And it's just the parallels between the 3 Hiccups and how their stories all lead back into each other. And it's a fantastic work. And I think especially if you want to write epic stories, even if you want a more serious young adult or adult epic series, I highly recommend reading them just to see how it's done well. And yeah. Watch the movies, read the books. Also, please like this video, comment, and let me know your thoughts. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, please, and ring the bell for notifications of when I post new videos. I have no idea when I post them. It's pretty much just whenever I can. I am a pinup artist, and I might be a writer soon, again. You can find me on social media. Song Erickson on Twitter, Song W. Erickson on Facebook, Instagram, and my Redbubble store, if you want to buy anything with my art on it. Or you can support me on Ko-Fi. All the links are in the description. Thank you for sitting through this, and go read the books. And until next time, have a great day.